If you grew up on a steady diet of sci-fi movies, you definitely know the drill.
Oh, absolutely.
You've seen Terminator, War Games, maybe Minority Report.
Right.
And the script is almost always exactly the same. The artificial intelligence gets too smart.
Way too fast.
Right, too fast. It goes rogue. It starts making these decisions it really shouldn't. And the government, usually the military, right?
Oh, usually, yeah.
They have to swoop in at the absolute last second to smash the glass, pull the plug, and basically save humanity from the machine. They are the ultimate safety net.
It's a comforting narrative, isn't it? The idea that when the technology runs wild, the state is the adult in the room ready to just rein it in.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a little unsettling, because we are recording this on Wednesday, February 25th, 2026.
Right.
And the reality we are staring at right now, it is the total inverse of that movie script.
A complete 180.
The government isn't stepping in to put safety rails on AI. They're stepping in to rip them off. And they are actually threatening to destroy an entire company to do it.
That is the headline right there. We aren't looking at a situation where the state is the brakes on innovation anymore.
Right.
We are looking at a state intervention designed to force a private company to essentially weaponize its product against its own safety protocols.
So today, we are doing a deep dive into a high-stakes standoff that is happening literally as we speak. It is this massive collision between the Pentagon and one of Silicon Valley's most prominent AI labs, Anthropic.
And there's a literal ticking clock attached to this one.
A real deadline. And folks, our mission today is to synthesize a huge stack of sources. We've got reports from The Guardian, Axios, the BBC.
Plus some really dense but fascinating academic papers.
Yeah, from Data and Society, the NYU Stern School of Business, and the American Bar Association. So we're really trying to understand this critical moment in history where innovation, ethics, and state power are just colliding.
We're witnessing a clash between what the industry calls aligned AI and a government pushing for total acceleration.
Total acceleration. So you might want to grab your coffee because this story has everything. Secret memos, a deadline that expires in literally 48 hours, and a philosophical battle over whether a computer program should be allowed to refuse an order.
Let's unpack it.
Yeah, let's start with the players.
Right, because to understand the conflict, we have to understand the specific ideologies clashing here. It isn't just a generic government versus tech story. On one side of the ring, you have Anthropic.
Right. And for those of you who haven't been obsessively refreshing tech news for the last 5 years, Anthropic occupies a very specific niche.
They do.
They were founded back in 2021 by former OpenAI employees, right?
Yes, Dario Amodei and his team.
And they explicitly left because they thought the industry was just moving too fast, playing way too loose with safety.
Their entire brand identity is built around what they call constitutional AI.
Constitutional AI.
Right. They created the Claude model. And unlike other models that just learn from the internet and try to predict the next word, Claude has a secondary training layer.
The Constitution.
Exactly. It literally has a constitution.
I always think of it like a genius in a lamp, but one that has actually read a moral philosophy textbook.
That's a good way to put it.
Like you can ask it to write a sonnet or code a website, and it's fantastic. But if you ask it to help you design, say, a biological weapon,
Or set up a mass surveillance grid to spy on civilians.
right, Claude is programmed to basically say, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that.
And it's not just a polite refusal. It is a hard-coded inability to comply with high-risk requests. They have this thing called a responsible scaling policy.
Right, the RSP.
The core idea there is that as the model gets smarter and more capable, the safety measures have to get proportionally stronger. They specifically built the model to refuse harmful instructions regarding things like lethal autonomous weapons systems.
Okay, so that's the good guy narrative, or at least, the cautious guy narrative.
The ethical option, as they position themselves.
Right, so enter the challenger.
The Pentagon.
Yep.
Specifically, the Department of Defense under the current Trump 2.0 administration, led by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth.
And their philosophy is, well, let's call it urgent.
Urgent is putting it mildly. According to the Axios and BBC reports, they are operating under a strict doctrine of total acceleration.
Total acceleration.
The current administration firmly believes that in the global race for AI dominance, specifically against rivals like China's speed, is the only metric that actually matters.
We actually saw a hint of this back in December 2025.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
When the administration tried to block individual states from passing their own AI safety regulations.
I wanted to clear the runway completely.
That was the warm-up. But to really understand their mindset, you have to look at one of the key sources in our stack. It's a paper from Data and Society titled The Big AI State.
I read that one. It's heavy, but the core concept is absolutely fascinating.
It really is.
Right.
It argues that we've moved past the era of surveillance capitalism.
Right, where companies just want your data to sell you shoes or targeted ads.
Exactly. We are entering the era of the big AI state. This is where the U.S. government actively leverages its massive regulatory, diplomatic, and financial power to reshape the entire industry.
So they aren't just a customer buying software anymore.
No, they are an enforcer.
So instead of the government acting as a referee, ensuring fair play and safety for everyone, they are becoming the coach, the owner, and the star player all at once.
And their playbook prioritizes capital accumulation and military dominance above everything else. Safety is secondary.
So the argument in the paper is that the state views AI not as a consumer product, but as a critical national asset.
Correct. And if that asset has safety rails that slow it down or limit its lethality in any way, the state views those rails as a defect, not a feature.
A defect. Wow. So you have a government that wants maximum power and maximum speed, and a company that says, whoa, slow down, we have ethical lines we absolutely will not cross.
The tension has been building for a long time.
But something snapped this week. What actually happened to trigger the standoff?
It started with a contract. Last year, the Pentagon signed a $200 million pilot program with Anthropic.
$200 million. That's not small change. That is, we own a piece of your retention money.
It is significant financial leverage. They wanted to use Claude for classified systems. But in January of this year, just last month, Secretary Hegseth issued a memo.
Right.
It was a directive to AI companies demanding the removal of what he called frictional restrictions for military use.
Frictional restrictions. That is quite the bureaucratic euphemism for safety protocols.
It's essentially speak for turn off the conscience. Basically, the Pentagon is saying, if we are paying for this tool, we want to be able to use it however we see fit without the software telling us no.
And Anthropic, staying true to their brand, said no.
They pushed back hard. They completely refused to lift the guardrails that prevent the model from being used for domestic mass surveillance or for lethal autonomous weapon systems.
What the military calls laws. Which brings us to this week, Monday, February 23rd.
Monday was the flashpoint. Secretary Hegseth summoned Anthropic's CEO directly to the Pentagon.
And this wasn't a friendly chat over coffee.
Not at all. It wasn't a negotiation. Hegseth issued a formal ultimatum.
And this is the ticking clock we mentioned at the top of the show.
Yes. Hegseth gave Anthropic until this Friday, February 27th at 5:10 p.m. to comply.
Wow. That is just 2 days from when we were recording this. So what happens if Anthropic says, no, we are sticking to our principles? What is the actual threat here?
The threats are severe, and they escalate really quickly. First, obviously, the immediate cancellation of that $200 million contract.
Sure, hit them in the wallet.
But it goes much further. The Guardian reported that Hegseth threatened to declare Anthropic a supply chain risk.
Wait, isn't that a designation usually reserved for foreign adversaries, like companies that are actively accused of spying on the U.S.?
It is. Applying it to a U.S. company, arguably the most safety-conscious U.S. company, is completely unprecedented.
It would effectively blacklist an American company within its own government.
It signals to every other business, do not touch these guys. They are radioactive.
But the nuclear option, and this is what has legal scholars genuinely terrified, is that the Pentagon threatened to invoke the Defense Production Act.
The DPA.
Right, the DPA. Now, historically, that's usually for, forcing car factories to make ventilators during a pandemic or tanks during World War II. It's in order to make more of the thing you already make.
Correct. But here, they aren't asking Anthropic to make more Claude models. They are threatening to use the DPA to legally force Anthropic to alter the underlying code.
To strip out the safety measures by federal mandate.
Exactly. So the government would literally seize control of the intellectual property to make it more dangerous for the sake of national security.
That is wild. It totally redefines the relationship between the state and the private sector.
It's the state saying, your product is simply too important to be governed by your corporate values. It belongs to the mission now.
Now, I can hear some of our listeners thinking, okay, this is a lot of high-level drama, lawyers yelling at each other in boardrooms. Maybe the military is right.
That's the counter-argument.
Right, like maybe in a war, you just can't have a pacifist chatbot. Does this actually matter in the real world?
It absolutely matters.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we have a concrete example that shows this isn't just hypothetical bickering. This isn't just about lines of code, it's about actual life and death on the battlefield.
You're referring to the Venezuela raid.
Yes, and this is a very heavy realization. While this philosophical argument is happening in the Pentagon,
Right.
we have reports confirming that a version of Claude was already used in a field operation.
Right, via a partnership with the data analytics firm Palantir.
Exactly. This was during the highly controversial raid in Venezuela recently.
And the outcome of that raid was tragic.
83 deaths.
83.
The AI was used to rapidly identify targets and predict insurgent movements. Now, here's the crucial nuance. The AI didn't go rogue.
It didn't break its programming.
No, it did exactly what it was told to do. It identified targets with incredible, ruthless efficiency. But when you remove the human in the loop, or when the human trusts the machine so much that they essentially stop checking its work, the natural friction of decision-making just vanishes.
So normally a human intelligence analyst might look at a target and say, wait, that looks like a civilian gathering, or maybe the intel is sketchy there, let's pause.
But the AI says target, and the strike happens almost instantly.
It accelerates the kill chain.
That is exactly what Anthropic is resisting. They aren't just trying to protect their PR or their brand image. They are looking at a real body count.
They are trying to prevent their creation from being used to facilitate automated lethality.
Right.
Which feels like a perfect moment to pivot to the why. Why is the expert community so freaked out by this? Aside from the obvious horrors of specific raids, what are the systemic risks we're looking at here?
Well, you mentioned LAWs earlier.
Oh.
Lethal autonomous weapon systems.
Right.
This is where we need to look at the scientific context. We have research from the Future of Life Institute, and specifically the work by Stuart Russell, which was heavily referenced in a recent Nature paper.
Yeah, they talk about the danger of flash war.
Flash wars.
Which sounds like a snappy marketing term, but I assume it's actually terrifying. What exactly is a flash war?
To understand it, think about the stock market. You know how high-frequency trading works?
Yeah, where algorithms buy and sell stocks in microseconds to make fractions of a penny. No humans involved.
And do you remember the flash crash?
Oh, yeah.
Where the market just tanked in seconds because algorithm A reacted to a tiny movement? Algorithm B reacted to algorithm A, and they spiraled down faster than any human trader could even blink.
It's an automated, uncontrollable feedback loop.
Exactly. Now apply that exact logic to modern warfare.
Oh, wow.
Imagine the U.S. has a drone swarm controlled by an unleashed, uncensored version of Claude. China has a drone swarm controlled by their own military AI.
Both are programmed to defend aggressively and respond to threats instantly.
So algorithm A sees a glint of light or a weird heat signature, misinterprets it as a missile launch, and it fires a warning shot.
And then algorithm B sees that fire, interprets it as a full-scale declaration of war, and just empties its entire arsenal.
And before a human general can even pick up the red phone to say stand down, the war is basically over and the damage is done. The conflict escalates mathematically.
That's a lot to process. So Anthropic's refusal to allow autonomous lethal use isn't just about pacifism. It's literally a brake pedal in a system that naturally wants to go from 0 to Mach 1 instantly.
It's the only friction left. And the Pentagon is effectively arguing we have to cut the brake lines because we're pretty sure the other guy is cutting his brake lines.
It's the ultimate prisoner's dilemma.
It really is.
But there is another angle to this ultimatum too, right? The American Bar Association report touches on this. The Pentagon doesn't just want access for weapons, they want it for surveillance.
That's the other half of Hegseth's demand. They want unfettered access to Claude for analyzing vast amounts of domestic and international surveillance data.
And the ABA report from 2024 highlights a critical issue here: bias.
Yes.
We hear about bias in AI a lot. You know, the data is biased. But what does that actually mean when we're talking about a military or intelligence context?
It means the models are trained on historical human data. And history, as we all know, contains deep patterns of racism, classism, and discrimination.
Right.
If you unleash an uncensored model to find threats in a massive domestic population, it doesn't just reflect those historical biases. Because of its scale, it amplifies them.
So it's statistically likely to flag marginalized communities as risks at a much higher rate than others.
Precisely. And the really dangerous part is that because this assessment comes from a superintelligent AI, it gives that discrimination a false veneer of objective science.
It becomes very hard for a human judge or officer to argue with the computer. The computer says they're a threat, so they must be.
Exactly. So if the government forces Anthropic to remove the filters that account for and try to mitigate that bias, They're essentially automating oppression on a massive scale.
So we have the risk of an accidental algorithmic nuclear war abroad and the risk of automated, unchecked discrimination at home.
It's a pretty grim picture.
It really is. I want to look at the business and economic angle for a second, though, because we also have this analysis from the NYU Stern School of Business. How do they view this government intervention from an economic standpoint?
They view it as a massive governance crisis. Their analysis focuses heavily on the concept of the counterweight.
The counterweight, what does that mean in this context?
Well, in a healthy capitalist democracy, private companies act as a check on state power. If the government wants to do something extreme or highly risky, the free market can say, no, that's bad for business, we won't build it for you.
And Anthropic is acting as that counterweight right now.
They're the prime example of it.
But if the government comes in and uses the Defense Production Act to say, actually, you must build this or we will take over your company and do it ourselves,
Then that counterweight is completely gone.
it evaporates.
It destroys the market's ability to self-regulate.
Yeah.
And the NYU Stern paper raises another fascinating, really practical point that I don't think the Pentagon has fully considered here.
What's that?
The severe risk of brain drain.
Oh, that makes total sense. We are talking about highly, highly specialized talent here.
Extremely specialized. There were only a few thousand people in the world who can build these frontier models. If you are a brilliant AI researcher, and you specifically went to work for Anthropic because you deeply believe in the constitutional AI mission,
Right, you want to build safe AI.
and suddenly the government kicks down the door and legally forces your boss to turn your life's work into a weapon, what do?
You leave. You just quit.
You quit. You move to a jurisdiction where that doesn't happen, maybe Europe, maybe elsewhere, or you leave the defense-adjacent field entirely.
So paradoxically, by forcing these companies to aid the military right now, the Pentagon might actually drive away the exact engineering talent they desperately need to maintain U.S. dominance in the long run.
It's a massive backfire waiting to happen.
It creates a big AI state that is completely hollowed out because all the principled engineers have fled.
It's a core tension that simply isn't going away.
Yeah.
We're seeing a fundamental reshaping of the tech industry. The Trump 2.0 administration is clearly signaling that when national security is on the table, private corporate ethics are irrelevant.
So let's quickly recap where we stand as we head toward the end of the week. We have Anthropic holding the line on ethical, aligned AI.
Right.
We have a government administration prioritizing sheer speed and military dominance, threatening to use wartime federal powers to force compliance.
And we have a hard deadline of this Friday at 5:00 p.m.
The stakes just couldn't be higher. Because it's not just about one $200 million contract.
No, it's about setting a permanent precedent.
If Anthropic caves, or if they are legally forced to cave, every other AI company, OpenAI, Google, Meta, they all get the message.
The message being the guardrails are strictly optional when the state comes knocking.
And what if they don't cave? What if Dario Amodei stares down the Secretary of Defense on Friday at 4:59 p.m. and basically says, do your worst?
Then we enter completely uncharted legal and political territory. Does the government actually send in federal agents to seize the code?
Do they bankrupt and destroy a leading American tech company just to make a point?
We are watching a high-speed game of chicken between the concept of responsible AI and the absolute sheer force of the state.
It is absolutely riveting and honestly a little terrifying to watch unfold.
It is arguably the most important story in the world right now, and the climax is happening behind closed doors this week.
Before we sign off today, I want to leave you, our listeners, with something to really think about. We've talked about the laws, we've talked about the threats, the economics, and the tech, but let's get very specific about accountability.
This is the ultimate question.
Right. If the government invokes the Defense Production Act, if they legally force Anthropic to unlock the safety measures on Claude against the company's will,
Yes.
and then down the line, Claude makes mistakes. Say it initiates one of those flash wars, or it misidentifies a target in a raid, and innocent people die. Who is actually responsible?
That is exactly the question to end on. Is it the creator of the code who warned everyone it wasn't safe and tried everything to stop it?
Or is it the state that deliberately broke the lock?
It's a legal and moral gray area we've never faced before.
It's definitely something for you to mull over while you watch the news this Friday at 5:00 p.m. We will be watching right along with you to see how this breaks. This has been our deep dive for today. Thanks so much for listening.
Stay curious.
And stay safe. We'll catch you next time.